I want to start by affirming that with a story that's about one of you. One of you who happened to have a child in your classroom, a child like 1 out of 2 kids in the United States of America who was raised in a single family, a child like many of us students across this country, extremely impoverished home life. In fact, this little girl's greatest challenge each day was to wake up and see if there was going to be enough milk in the refrigerator. She lived in a tenement. And like many kids, wasn't aware that she had any strengths or talents or any specialnesses. But she also had a gift in her life, and the gift was one of you. Simply what you did was recognize that this child was at risk. But what you also did that's the true gift of an educator is that you decided to find something she was good at to make her feel like she was a special somebody. And one day, after you were watching her out on that playground, you discovered that this kid had some abilities that she probably wasn't aware of. She could run and she could jump quite well. And that was the day you took a minute out of your time to pull her aside and just simply say, I want you to know what you're good at. The child said you did 30 seconds more of one more little thing. You also took 30 seconds to say, and this is how you can get better. You coached, you modeled, and you demonstrated it. And then each day you took her aside for maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and reminded her, one day, here's what happened. She recalls that the school bus would always drop her off in front of a city park. She'd have to run through the city park in order to get to her tenement. And that day, as she was running home through the city park, she happened to pass a children's sandbox. She looked at the sandbox, and all of a sudden, it dawned on her that there was something there in that sand that the teacher had told her she needed in order to improve on her skill. And so she looked for the second thing she knew she needed. And it was right in front of her. It was a garbage can. She looked in the garbage can and pulled out an empty potato chip bag, dumped the few crumbs, and then took the bag, went over to the sandbox, knelt down, and began to fill this potato chip bag up with sand. Clasped it, 9 years of age, ran several blocks back to her home, and dumped it in front of the first stoop of her tenement. Took the same bag, ran several blocks back, knelt down, and filled this bag up again with sand. Clasped it, ran several blocks, and dumped it. Took it, ran several blocks, and filled it. I ask you, how many times do you think it took an elementary-age child to fill a potato chip bag with enough sand to create her own broad jump? That's the only way she could afford it. That's what you told her she needed in order to improve in her skills. And then what she did was spend hour after hour jumping in the exact formation you had coached, modeled, and demonstrated. At age 14, she turned to her mother and said, someday I'm going to win a gold medal. She won not one, she won several. Because that little girl turned out to be what many people say one of the greatest women athletes in this world. That child is Jackie Joyner Kersey. Now, let's go one step more. I know she deserves gold medals. That there's somebody who also deserved that they forgot to give it to, and that was called the teacher. The teacher, because he had the foresight to recognize this child had a gift and a talent. He knew she was troubled, but he didn't give up. What he did instead was help her recognize her strengths. You are extraordinary because you turn children's lives around. Many kids, the look in your eye is what will sustain them throughout not only a 5-hour school day, but resilience theory says many of those kids, it's the rest of their lives. So you're required to do one thing and do it right now. You turn to the person next to you, pat that person on the back and say, God, you are a difference maker, and then I'm going to show you how to do it.